What the hell is the Final Getsuga Tensho? Who developed this technique, and why does the individual who uses this technique lose all of their powers? These are the questions that will hopefully be answered by the end of the video. But before we get into it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And with that being said, let's get into it. First things first, in order to do this, I need to explain what the regular Getsuga Tensho is. The Getsuga Tensho in English translates to Moonfang, Heaven Piercer. This is a technique which involves Ichigo's Zanpakuto absorbing and condensing a high concentration of his spiritual pressure at the tip of his blade. It is then magnified and released in a slash shaped like the crescent moon. After training with Zangetsu, Ichigo was finally able to master the Getsuga Tensho. Additionally, Zangetsu reveals that the energy that is released differs greatly depending on whether or not the user knows its name, which just gives Ichigo an excuse to constantly scream out, "Getsuga Tensho! Getsuga Tensho! Getsuga Tensho! Getsuga Tensho! Getsuga Tensho!" However, stating its name isn't the only way to increase its power. Throughout the story of Bleach, Ichigo learns that he can amplify the power of his Getsuga Tensho by using different methods, and because of this, he goes on to create many variations of the Getsuga Tensho. But the main focus of today's video will be about the strongest variation of the Getsuga Tensho, and I am of course talking about Mugetsu. After undergoing strange training under the supervision of his dad, Ichigo achieves transcendence by becoming Getsuga itself. During the later chapters of the battle for Karakura Town, it seemed like all hope was lost. The Gotai 13 were not only outclassed by one individual, but they were also virtually wiped out. With the strongest Soul Reapers out of the picture, even our protagonists had succumbed to despair, and for a moment it looked like Aizen would emerge from the turmoil as the victor. However, a window of hope was opened when Isshin Kurosaki spoke out the words, "The Final Getsuga Tensho." After Aizen coincidentally destroys the Kototsu, this enabled Ichigo and Isshin to use the Bankai to their benefit. To put it simply, the Bankai is cut from the world of the living and the Soul Society, and this means that it is also cut from space and time, which means that if someone were to spend 2,000 hours inside of it, only an hour would have passed on the outside. So for a total of 3 months, Ichigo would train in the Bankai in order to attain the Final Getsuga Tensho. Isshin instructs Ichigo to take a meditation position called Jizen, which translates to Sword Zen. By placing his Zanpakuto on his knees and focusing on his sword, Ichigo would be able to enter his inner world and communicate with Zangetsu. To cut a long story short, Ichigo enters his inner world, and Zangetsu was hesitant to teach him the technique for a specific reason that we would later come to learn. Anyways, both White and Old Man, I guess we should call him Young Man Zangetsu, merged together to become one being. Originally, we were led to believe that Ichigo had to defeat Zangetsu in order to learn the Final Getsuga Tensho. However, this was incorrect. It was simple. All Ichigo had to do was accept Zangetsu, both literally and mentally. After getting stabbed with Zangetsu, the secrets of Mugetsu were passed on to Ichigo through the blade. After this, the next time we see Ichigo, he was barely recognizable. Not only was his hair overgrown, but most importantly, his Zanpakuto was attached to his arm, and because of this, the right sleeve of his arm was ripped, and chains were wrapped around his arm. This form would be given the name Dangai Ichigo by Bleach fans. In this form, Ichigo's spirit energy was undetectable, and this is because he converted all of his spirit's energy into pure physical strength. And yeah, To put it simply, Ichigo shows us the fruits of his labor by literally bullying Aizen. Not only does he forcibly take Aizen to a different battlefield, but he was also able to react to Aizen's godlike speed. Just the force of his sword colliding with Aizen's was enough to shatter mountains, and he even manages to block Aizen's attack with only his hand. The most surprising fact of all was that with just one hand, Ichigo completely shatters Aizen's black coffin, which by the way is a level number 90 Kido. As you can imagine, Aizen was beginning to become frustrated, and because of this, the Hogyoku grants him an even stronger form. And with this new power, Aizen unleashes a literal nuke on Ichigo. However, things didn't go as expected because Ichigo's left arm took the brunt of the attack. Finally, after putting Aizen through a trial of humiliation, Ichigo decides to unleash the Final Getsuga Tensho. He grips his right arm, and immediately after, he is consumed with a dome of Reiatsu, and when the Reiatsu settles, what we see is arguably the most badass transformation in the entirety of Bleach. Ichigo's hair color changes from the iconic orange to black, and his hair was waist length. Grayish bandages covered his nose all the way down to his torso and right arm. His body was also emitting Reiatsu, and this Reiatsu was mainly focused around his right arm. Hell, he even had red eyes. The lower part of his Shihakusho was all that remained, and surprisingly, his Zanpakuto had disappeared. Even after unleashing this immense power, Aizen still couldn't sense Ichigo's spirit energy, leading him to the realization that Ichigo had reached a higher playing field than he was currently operating in. After this, Ichigo extends his right arm, and a short, thin line of black Reiatsu is generated. Ichigo utters out the words Mugetsu, which translates to moonless sky. Next, he swings his sword at Aizen. Immediately after, Aizen is consumed with a massive veil of dark Reiatsu. The power behind this technique was so powerful that it even managed to seriously wound Aizen and also force him back into his previous form. But unfortunately, because the Hogyoku granted Aizen immortality, Mugetsu couldn't kill him, and with the battle done and dusted, we were finally able to learn why Zangetsu didn't want to teach Ichigo the Final Getsuga Tensho. See, the individual who uses this technique will lose all of their powers, hence why it is called the Final Getsuga Tensho, and this is made very evident when Mugetsu dissipates and Ichigo immediately reverts back to his original form. We only see this technique once, and after that we never hear about it again, and that's why I felt like it was important to address this topic. Now, I personally believe that the Final Getsuga Tensho is a technique that was not only developed by the Shiba clan, but it is also a technique that is solely exclusive for the use of the clan. Currently, we don't have a lot of information about the Shiba clan. All we know is that Kain Shiba, who was unfortunately killed by Rukia, was the previous head of the Shiba clan. But after he passed away, Kukaku became the head of the clan, and Isshin is actually the uncle of Kukaku and Ganju, which obviously means that Ichigo is related to them. Now, I don't know how Isshin heard about this technique or even let alone learned how to do the technique. And here's an even better question. Has he ever done the technique on himself? Seeing as how the individual who uses this technique will lose all of their powers, I find it hard to believe that Isshin performed this technique on himself. However, Isshin does state, and I quote, "My Engetsu was the same. They don't want to teach us this technique. You will know why soon," which hints towards the fact that Isshin also tried to learn the Final Getsuga Tensho, but I doubt he was successful. I personally believe that this technique is only meant to be used under extreme situations, and seeing as how Aizen was a transcendent being, Isshin knew that the only way to defeat him was to fight fire with fire. So there you have it. The regular Getsuga Tensho utilizes only a portion of Ichigo's spiritual pressure, while Mugetsu, on the other hand, is all of Ichigo's spiritual pressure concentrated into one single sword slash and aimed at an opponent. Thank you for making it to the end, and if you enjoyed the video, then please like and subscribe, and also turn on the notifications because it really helps the channel out. And also tell me down in the comment section what you guys believe the Final Getsuga Tensho is. Do you agree with my theory? And if not, then tell me what your theory is. I would really like to know. Peace out.